Hi, my name's Ralph Lopez, and I'm a co-founder of Jobs for Afghans. It's a group with a plan to bring an earlier and less bloody end to this war, which I feel is spinning out of control. As I read the papers, it breaks my heart to see this war spinning out of control, because I do very strongly believe that it is unnecessary. What many Americans don't know is that there is 40% unemployment in Afghanistan, and 70% of the insurgents join to collect the wage because it pays money, and it's often the only job in town. Who says this? General David Petraeus in 2009, in April, said in a speech in Kansas that young Afghan men should be given an alternative to fighting for the extremists. Someone else who holds this view is General Carl Eikenberry, who is former commander of U.S. forces in Afghanistan. And he said to Congress in 2007, and I quote, that most of the insurgents are drawn from the ranks of men looking for wages to feed their families. And then just this March in 2009, in Brussels, Vice President Joe Biden said that 70% of the Taliban fights only because it pays. And so we have this situation where you have literal starvation, widespread malnutrition, hunger, desperate conditions, and men with no other way to feed their families except by joining their insurgency. Now, what is the answer to this? We think the answer is a program which would hire many Afghans at day labor jobs paying $5 to $10 a day. Now, let me back up. What has happened in Afghanistan is that the reconstruction never arrived. The Taliban was overthrown in 2001, and the money that should have gone to rebuild the country instead went to Iraq. The country was badly neglected. The infrastructure there is still non-existent. No one has electricity. 3/4 of the people have no safe drinking water. 1 out of 4 children or 5 children dies before the age of 5. Really terrible conditions that I think a lot of Americans don't understand, don't get the real picture of what is going on in the country. So you've had 8 years of severe neglect, and during most of that 8 years, even that being given, it was a relatively peaceful country until about 2-3 years ago, when the Taliban finally started picking up strength by hiring these young men with no other way to feed their families and bringing them over with the promise basically of a wage. So you have a country that's been very badly neglected. We think that a fund, and this is what we are lobbying Congress for, which consists of just 5% of what we spend on military operations each year, devoted exclusively to a program of cash for work jobs, will severely reduce the insurgency. Now, what is cash for work? We all hear about the supposed corruption in Afghanistan, and it's there, it does take place. However, what many people don't know is that this corruption takes place both inside and outside the country. In other words, you have the same thing happening there which happened with Halliburton in Iraq. Foreign contractors, Western contractors from the United States, Europe, come in, pick up a $500 million contract, promise to build a bunch of schools. Schools never get built or get built very shoddily. They take vast profits, sometimes as much as 40% of the total amount of the contract, and they get rich, but the country doesn't get rebuilt. So what Cash for Work does is it's designed to put cash directly into the hands of Afghan laborers, mostly unskilled laborers, at the end of each workday, thereby bypassing a lot of these avenues for corruption and mismanagement which exist both inside and outside the country. There is no shortage of projects that can be done with under the Cash for Work scheme. In Afghanistan, if you go to that country and look around, it looks almost no different, except in certain parts of Kabul where there is a building boom in most of the country, than when the Soviets left it. There's rubble all over, half demolished buildings. Nobody gets clean water because canals are still bombed out, filled with debris. Irrigation waterways are still filled with debris. And so there are literally millions of jobs where you could hire young men at $5 per day, $5 to $10 per day, which, believe it or not, in this country is a lot of money. The Afghan police force pays $75 a month. A job with the Afghan National Army pays $150 a month. So this is a place where $5, $10 a day goes a very long way and would wind up supporting 2 or 3 families. In the April 2009 issue of Time magazine, this issue, Korangal Valley elder, which is a valley in Afghanistan, is quoted, and here's what he says. He says, "Many people say that the Taliban are fighting because there are Americans here and it's a jihad. But the fact is, they aren't fighting for religion. They are fighting for the money. If they had jobs, they would stop fighting." And so here you have people in Afghanistan telling us, look, start some jobs and your problems are over. They'll stop fighting. And so what we at Jobs for Afghans believe is that the President and our Congress need to be smart now and need to wage this war in a smarter way, not just with bombs and bullets. When you have generals like General David Petraeus and General Carl Eikenberry and Vice President Joe Biden all agreeing on what the problem is, it's almost a no-brainer to not try something like a Cash for Work job program, which needs to be implemented on a large enough scale and a wide enough scale to really make a difference. One of the best reasons I can think of to lobby our Congress to pass a 5% solution, that's what we call it, 5% of the cost of the present military operations devoted exclusively to a Cash for Work job program, which would create enough jobs to make a difference, is that we cannot afford another long and costly war fought the old-fashioned way, with very expensive bombs, very expensive gasoline for fighter planes. There's really nothing more expensive than war, and we owe it to our soldiers to do everything we can to reduce the insurgency the easy way by giving these men jobs so that they can feed their hungry families. Is there anybody that wouldn't do whatever they had to do if their family was starving? We need the money that we would be spending on this never-ending war right here at home. I will be traveling to Kabul in June to present the Jobs for Afghans initiative to a number of humanitarian organizations who have invited me there to make this presentation.